All right, so we'll get started. So thank you everybody for joining us today for the social responsibility webinar. It's definitely something that we really like to focus on at STU. We like our students to be super involved. So I'm really glad that we can have this webinar and kind of tell you more about the opportunities you can have while you are at St. Thomas to get involved with social justice and social responsibility. So my name is Hannah. I'm an admissions counselor at STU. So that just means that my job is to help you with anything you want to know, answer any questions you have about STU. And I'm also a STU grad myself. I did my Bachelor of Arts at STU. I graduated in 2018 with my degree in English and History. And then I came back a second time to do my Bachelor of Education at STU as well. So if you want to get involved in today's session, you can ask questions right in the Q&A box. And at the end, we'll have a panel. So we have some current students joining us today. So any questions you ask, we'll get them addressed at the end of the webinar. So social responsibility, like I said, is something that we really like to focus on at St. Thomas. A big part of that is that we are a liberal arts school. So we really want to be as centered in social responsibility and justice as we can be. And there are tons of ways to get involved at St. Thomas with social responsibility, whether it's in classes, in clubs, societies, internships, experiential learning. Really, there's not a way to get through the four-year degree at St. Thomas without being involved in some way, just because we want to make sure that our students are really learning about how to be global citizens while they're at St. Thomas. And part of that is learning about issues going on in the world and how we can work to address those. So St. Thomas is the only public university in Canada that only offers undergraduate liberal arts programs. So, sorry, my cat is trying to climb underneath my couch next to me. So part of being a liberal arts education is that we want our students to, in their classes, really get lots of different perspectives. We have tons of different programs you can take at St. Thomas. And in tons of our departments, there is a focus on social justice and social responsibility. So speaking from experience, I did a minor in sociology, and I definitely learned a lot about the different ways that our society is kind of built and the different ways that I could help to make society better. And so many of our departments are like that because, like I said, we want our students to really understand when they leave STU the different ways that social issues affect their lives and how they can work to change those for other people as well. So some really unique things about STU are that we have a really supportive community. So this really feeds into the idea of social justice and responsibility because you're getting to know people from all over the world with different perspectives. And it really helps you to really grow as a person and understand different ways people think about things and different ways people look at things. I know personally coming from a pretty small town and then coming to St. Thomas, I really learned a lot about how to get involved and how to advocate for myself and for other people just by being really close to the people in the STU community who were able to teach me those things. And a big factor in that as well is the transferable skills you're gaining. You're learning ethics, you're learning teamwork, communication, critical thinking, all which to help you look at the world's big problems from a really critical lens where you can start to understand them a lot better. And of course, this all goes back to STU being rooted in social justice. You're really not going to find somewhere on somewhere that I've been that's been more vocal about things that are going on in the world, people that are super passionate about tons of different issues going on at STU. It's definitely one of the most involved communities I've ever seen, just because everybody is so passionate about getting involved with all those causes that they're really caring about. So it's a really great place to be if you're really someone who likes to get involved in everything like that and to really get involved in the world of social justice and responsibility and work towards making those changes. So we have tons of clubs and societies at St. Thomas that you can get involved in outside of the classroom that really have a focus on social justice. We have things like Enactus, the Black Student Association, Global Brigades, which actually goes abroad to help people in developing countries, the Q&A Society for our Queer Students Human Rights Group, the STU International Students Association, Student Union, Sustainability Societies, the Women's Center and Mental Health Society. So even outside of your classes, there are so many ways that you can be involved with different issues that are going on. And there's even more than just these. Really, there's no limit to the ways you can get involved at St. Thomas. We also offer lots of internships where you can focus on different issues. We have something called STU Cares. So you can actually go out into the Fredericton community and work towards issues that are going on there. So personally, when I was at STU, I took part in that. And I was able to do a day of volunteering working at the issue of homelessness in Fredericton. So Even outside of the classroom, we want our students to still be as involved as possible and to learn about how they can help to improve people's lives and improve their own lives. So now that we've had a little bit of an introduction about social responsibility at St. Thomas, we're going to have some of our current students join us. So we have a few different students joining us who are all part of different organizations on campus that focus on different social issues. So they're definitely going to be your experts on anything they can get involved with on campus. So if you have any questions for them about how you can get involved, about any of their clubs in particular, you can ask any questions and we'll pose those to our students. So I will get you guys to all start by introducing yourselves. So we'll go right down the list starting from Leanne. So you can say your name, what you're studying at STU, and about the organizations that you're part of.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Leanne Hudson. I'm a fourth-year student. I am double majoring in communications and policy and Native studies. I actually came here to New Brunswick from Nova Scotia, and I identify as Mi'kmaq from Acadia First Nation. During my time at STU, and I guess when I was deciding to come to STU, it was a big reason I came, just what Hannah was talking about, the community here and what you're learning outside the classroom is definitely was just as important to me as what I was going to be learning inside the classroom. So while I've been at STU, I've been pretty involved across campus in all sorts of different student-led groups and academic groups. But my main kind of focus has been supporting Indigenous students at STU. And since I identify myself, it was also a great opportunity to work on my own skills in that area too. And so while I've been at STU, I've kind of taken part in academic committees that work towards reconciliation, which is, reconciling non-Indigenous and Indigenous relations and people, the way that we teach about Indigenous subjects and topics and history in our classes at STU. And then I've also worked kind of more on the student level at our Wabanaki Student Center, hosting events and projects and helping Indigenous students and non-Indigenous students find their way through this kind of learning journey together. So that's a little bit about me, and I look forward to sharing more with you in a little bit though.
Hi, everybody. My name is Emily. I'm a second-year student. I'm also from Nova Scotia. I'm from Coal Harbour, Nova Scotia. I'm doing a double major in fine art and women and gender studies with a minor in human rights. Social justice and activism and social responsibility was really important to me when I was looking at a university that I wanted to go to. I wanted to go somewhere where that was not only kind of present, but where it was encouraged and where students got really involved in those kinds of things. And I was really able to find a lot of causes that were important to me going into university. And also I was able to take classes and find like-minded people and find new causes that I was passionate about and ways to really use my passion for activism. So I've really been able to find that in women and gender studies. And I've really been able to find that in human rights as well. And I found that those two disciplines for me have kind of blended together really nicely to give me a really good foundation in that. And it's definitely something I want to take into me with jobs and careers that I'm looking at, like taking with me into the future. In terms of kind of where I'm involved with social responsibility on campus, I'm currently co-president of the STU Mental Health Society. So I'm really passionate about activism towards that. And I've also been a volunteer and involved down with the University Women's Center. So that kind of deals with things related to like women's rights, menstrual health, safe, like access to resources and things like that. So if you have any questions about anything like that, I'm happy to answer.
Sorry, I was muted. My name is Quintina. I'm a third-year student majoring in human rights and Native studies. I was drawn to STU because of the human rights program in particular. During the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests across the globe, I was inspired to go to university in my 30s, but it has been a huge benefit to me, and I've been able to interact with Black youth in particular is something that I didn't actually have a lot of, just given my background. But I am currently the vice president of the Black Student Association at STU, and it has allowed me to be part of creating a safe and welcoming place for Black students in Fredericton.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia, and I'm a fourth-year student. I'm majoring in political science and honoring in human rights. Before coming to STU, I was working with a nonprofit organization, and I'd also been really involved in like student leadership in high school. So I had that like initial seed of passion for advocacy. But I would say maybe that's not particularly what drew me to STU, but rather once I got here, it kind of like grabbed a hold of me and I was like, oh, I want to get involved in everything. So I've found a lot of new advocacy passions at STU. Specifically, what I'll probably be talking about mostly tonight is my passion for student advocacy through my position of Vice President Education for the Students' Union. So I'm looking forward to working with this wonderful panel to answer some of your guys' questions tonight.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So I guess the first question I have for everybody is, how did you get involved with the current organizations that you're part of at STU? So we'll start from the same order. So we'll start with Leanne and go down the same order.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so that's a tricky question. Like Julia was saying, like I kind of had that seed coming to STU. I was pretty active in high school with my small high school, I will say. So coming to STU, it was kind of like a big window of opportunity for whatever project I could dream up. And it was kind of like the best of both worlds for me. Because finally I had the potential to do projects and start committees and do things that maybe couldn't have happened in my small high school. So for me, I kind of came with that passion, but again, like Julia was saying, you never know what you're going to do next. And at STU, there's so many inspiring people around us every day that are taking on new projects, that are starting new initiatives. And that has kind of fueled my fire too throughout my 4 years. So I started kind of in the typical positions. So I started as the Indigenous student representative on the Students' Union. And through that, I was able to meet a lot of our Indigenous student community, which I think we're like close to 200 students on our campus now. So I was able to kind of put down some roots in my first year, which is really wonderful. And then kind of through that work, though, I started to realize that, there's some big disconnect between our students, our faculty, our staff, and our administration at STU, and what we were working towards and how we were working on it. So in 2021, actually during the pandemic, I was staying at home, and we actually came together, a group of students, and we formed the Students' Reconciliation Committee, which works alongside the Wabanaki Student Center and the Senate Committee for Reconciliation. So we kind of work as like a tri-committee council thing that works at all different levels of the university to make sure that we're working towards and setting good intention for reconciliation on our campus and off our campus for our current students and also for our prospective students. So my main role has been connecting those three groups, but also working with non-Indigenous students and other groups on our team at STU to make sure that everybody stays connected and that people feel like they can be as involved as possible. So there has been some barriers for that. So non-Indigenous people sometimes feel like they don't have a role or they don't know where to start with reconciliation. So a lot of the work that I've done over the past couple of years especially has been making sure that this is a thing that we do together on our campus. And it's not something that just one group of people are working on, but that it's a visible issue that everybody can feel comfortable with and work with and understand. So that's kind of my bigger roles. Along the way, though, I've had various roles sitting on panels like this, but also advocating for financial resources for Indigenous students, advocating for additional supports on our campus, opening up some of the accessibility barriers for Indigenous students and non-Indigenous students on our campus, like different ways to submit your assignments, for instance, and things like that. So with these roles, you'll realize really quickly that you're exposed to a whole bunch of other things that you can do. And so with my time, on campus, it's led to opportunities off campus. I've picked up internships and work placements, all because of what I've done at STU. So you kind of start somewhere and then you kind of see where it goes. And I'm sure everyone else will have a similar kind of theory, is that the more you work with the STU community, the more doors start to open. So that's where I'm at right now. But yeah, if you have any questions about those committees or those groups, I'm more than happy to answer those questions a little later. For me,
was really passionate about activism in high school. I tried to be as involved as I could in things and starting initiatives and raising awareness for things. So I kind of came into STU knowing what I wanted to do, but not necessarily knowing how to do that yet. A big thing for me was during like my first couple weeks at STU, during welcome week and during those first few weeks of classes, there's usually a clubs and societies fair, presentations or events by different clubs and societies and organizations on campus. So that's kind of how I found out that the Mental Health Society was a thing. So I was a general member in the society last year. And then I ran for an executive position kind of this time last year. Actually, it was about the time that that was happening. And I've really kind of been able to find like a lot of causes that I've been really passionate about through the Mental Health Society. And I've really been able, it was something that I really wanted to do more of in high school, but I didn't really have the resources or the ability to get involved in that. And Stu really gave me a platform where I had the resources and I had the people around me that also wanted to help me with that. In terms of the Women's Center, I actually just was kind of told and became aware of the Women's Center through a class that I was taking. So when I came to STU originally just to study fine art, but I ended up taking the Intro to Women and Gender Studies course during my first year. And within like 3 weeks, probably not even that long, I like absolutely fell in love with it. And I was like, I need to do this too. And my professor, Dr. Margaret Campbell, who if you ever have the chance to take a class with her, I highly recommend it, was talking about different resources for students on campus and listed the Women's Center and said that they were looking for volunteers and that some people in our class might be really interested in that. So I went to an info session for that. I did the training and I volunteered at the Women's Center through all of my first year. I've also been able to kind of explore my advocacy for like women's rights and queer rights and things like that through that course and through the rest of the Women and Gender Studies courses that I've been taking throughout my degree now. So that's kind of where I got my start. And I've kind of been able to expand that through my time at STU and through my classes as well.
My experience is very similar to Leanne and Emily's. I knew about the Black Student Association prior to applying at STU. I had no idea how I was to get involved with that. And as the previous president was on her way out, Chris Sonia, I had spent a lot of time doing my own advocacy for Black History Month, just on my own personal social medias. And she had seen that, and just through making connections in classrooms and adding people on Facebook and things like that, she had asked me to run for this year's executive team. And I was hesitant, but I'm glad I did. It's opened up a lot of doors and allowed me to bring to light things that I feel are important in terms of the Black community, particularly in the Maritimes. So I'm sure you saw on the Black Student Association's Instagram, there was a large focus on maritime Black talent and scholarship. So it's been exciting to be able to take issues or raise awareness surrounding Black issues in Atlantic Canada. And I'm not sure I would have gotten the opportunity anywhere else other than at STU.
Yeah, so my experience is also similar. It's like that initial exposure and curiosity that you get in like your initial days at STU. And I think that like I was definitely probably naive, like especially in my first year, like I didn't fully understand what like, let's say the student union did. But I remember during welcome week, I was like, oh, they just seem to be planning like so many fun events. And I was like, I want to learn more, I want to get involved. So I got involved in first year as a first year representative. And then as I went through my first year, I learned more about like the advocacy piece of things. Like I knew more about like the event planning piece, but I didn't really have a full understanding of the advocacy piece. And then I remember there was issues like when I was serving on Senate with like the pass fail for students. And then I remember just working on different advocacy campaigns for like students to vote, for student loans and the removal of interest on provincial student loans. And I was like so fascinated that students could be directly involved in this advocacy, because I always thought it was something very exclusive that like only government officials and the university admin could be a part of. So I slowly like built the confidence over my first couple of years at STU, being involved in smaller representative roles, to finally gain the confidence to run for an executive position and be directly involved in those advocacy circles. So coming into it, you don't always need to know like the final destination and the full scope of your involvement, but you'll really kind of learn as you go. And like Leanne said, it'll open more opportunities throughout your degree.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So the first question we're going to have is going to be for Emily. So what initiatives have you been able to implement at STU in your role as co-president of the Mental Health Society?
Absolutely. So through the Mental Health Society, we kind of have a couple of different pillars, so we call them. So one of our pillars is self-care and self-wellness. We also talk a lot about education and a lot about just awareness and general things like that. So some of the things that I've been able to do as co-president and kind of that the society's been able to do since it was formed a couple of years ago, we've been able to establish panel discussions with mental health advocates from across the province. So that's both students, psychologists, therapists, people with lived experience, things like that, that have been able to share their stories, their advice, and kind of advocate for different like mental health initiatives. We've been able to host really fun events and kind of chill out events for students, some de-stress nights, therapy dogs, things like that. We've been able to work really closely with our mental health coordinator, Brittany, who's been really awesome, who kind of, she provides students, she offers counseling for students. So it's been really great to get to work really closely with her. Some things that we're hoping to do kind of moving forward is just really to expand kind of our education piece and hoping to do more panel discussions, maybe on more specific topics as well. So that's a little bit of what we've been able to do as a society.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So our next question is going to be for Julia. So what skills were you able to take from your classes that really helped you when you started getting involved with the Students' Union?
Yeah, so one of the really important skills, especially when you're working with the Students' Union, you're working with so many different, like, let's say stakeholders, be it like the university administration, the provincial, federal government, and you're working with people that may fundamentally disagree with you on a lot of different things. They have different interests for different groups. I might be advocating for students, but they may be advocating for a different group, or they may disagree with the advocacy asks. And I think that one of the really good transferable skills I've had is being able to exercise empathy and engage in conversations with people that are different from me and that have different points of view and perspectives from me. Again, I already mentioned this term, but also just building empathy. And when you're working with people, consulting with people, understanding that everyone has different experiences from you. And also, I would say something that I wouldn't have thought before entering this role that I would say now is some of like the research skills that I've gained are really important, because whenever you're like, let's say I'm like developing a policy on international student tuition, I need to kind of know my facts when I'm going to the table about what other provinces have implemented, what supports are in place there, so that I can engage in a dialogue that I'm informed and prepared for. And I think that STU really prepares you to have the arguments ready, have all your points made, to be ready to engage in intellectual debate. So I've definitely gained a lot of these skills from my various courses at STU.
Awesome. So our next question is going to be for Quintina. So how have you been able to amplify Black voices at STU as part of the Black Student Association?
So one way we try to amplify voices, since everything has moved mostly online and has remained there, is opening opportunities for students to either, if they want to share their art, if they want to share commentary, we are open to everything. That's something that we are working towards as well, is just increasing membership, because we believe that there's a disconnect between what STUBSA actually stands for and what people believe it to be. It's open to everyone. It's open to allies. It's open to all people of color. So the hope going into the 2023-2024 academic year is to harness a lot more solidarity between all students and getting more people involved with the Black Student Association.
Awesome. So our next question is going to be for Leanne. So what advice would you have for students who want to get involved with reconciliation work at STU but aren't really sure where to start?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. And I think the first thing I want to say is that you're not alone. And a lot of people that I've encountered have just been nervous. They don't know where to begin. It's a big thing to tackle. And I want to assure you that we're all in it together. I mean, I've worked in this area for a long time now. I've worked on many different projects, some like Julie was saying, where you need to do your research, and others that I'm just trying to feel it out, work with our community, you know, a little bit more laid back. And I can tell you that it's taken a long time to build comfort and a little bit of vulnerability and I guess, general knowledge about where to begin. And so if you're kind of looking at the word reconciliation and you don't know what it means, or you don't know where to start, or you think it's this huge thing that may never happen, you're not, you know, on your own in that thought. There's a lot of people out there that we use reconciliation as a buzzword, but we don't really know what it means and we don't know where to start. So my recommendation, I guess, is not to feel alone in that and not be embarrassed by that. You know, everybody has to start somewhere. And what's really great though is at St. Thomas, I think we do have a pretty open community in that way. You know, so you're not going to be the only one that doesn't have this education or these teachings. And sometimes it feels like you're the only one, but I assert that you are not the only one. So as you're kind of taking this first journey, I always recommend education. I know it sounds silly, but do some research, do your own research, because that shows that you're taking initiative for yourself, and it proves to other people that you're trying, and you're also trying for yourself too. And so if that's a simple Google search, you know, what is reconciliation, or why do we need reconciliation? Maybe you'll find some really good articles. Maybe you'll just find like a wiki page for all I care, and start that research though, because that I think is essential. So then when you come into, say, a classroom where reconciliation might be used, or you come to a committee, or you're sitting around, let's say, the STU table, and you start to hear these words that you're, you know, semi-familiar with, you have that much more understanding. And so to me, starting that journey happened a bit sooner than university because I'm Indigenous myself. But just because I'm Indigenous doesn't mean that I have an expertise on reconciliation and what it's going to look like and how it should play out for the rest of time. And so also understand that even though reconciliation considers non-Indigenous people and Indigenous people, it doesn't mean that one party is an expert over the other. And so as you're working with each other, keep an open mind of who's around you, right? So you could have Indigenous people, you could have non-Indigenous people, you'd have, you know, people from the Black Student Association, STUISA, you know, people like Julia who are advocating for all students. And to me, I think that is reconciliation, when we have all those different people coming together and working on common problems. And so when we try to isolate reconciliation to be like an Indigenous issue, that's kind of the problem. So I'd say start with the research, then meet some people, have some conversations, whether it's in your classroom in a more structured way, or maybe you're taking it, you know, to social media. Like Quintina was saying, a lot's happening on social media. You go there for your information, you start reading, but then also follow up. Like if you're interested and you're truly wanting to be part of that, there's so many opportunities at STU to do that. And it doesn't have to be a formal position on a committee. It doesn't have to be intense conversations. It can be getting to know people, finding common issues with each other that you're passionate about, and then working on them together. And that to me is reconciliation. So break it down for you, start there. But again, baby steps, and don't think of it like you're the only one in the room who's thinking that.
Awesome. So we're going back to Quintina for our next question. So you mentioned that the BSA is open to students that aren't Black at STU. So how would you recommend non-Black students go about getting involved, and what can people do to be allies in that community?
So the easiest way to get involved is to just shoot us an email or message one of us on Instagram, or the Black Student Association Instagram account. It goes right to us. And that's just to get you into the Facebook group, the messenger group, in order to be part of the communications that happen there. Another way to get involved is when there's activities or events that are being hosted, just to keep in mind that it is open to everyone. We want to see all students there. And the best way to be an ally, as Leanne was saying, is to educate yourself first. And it is become sort of a cliche, as she also alluded to, but it's the best way to get the foundation you need in order to learn the more nuanced issues that are happening in Canadian society, to be quite honest.
Awesome. So our next question is going to be for Emily. So why do you feel that mental health advocacy is so important for university students?
I think mental health advocacy is important for everyone, but I think there's like little pieces that are especially important for students. I think in the world today, we really push for like, I feel like what a lot of people we call in my class is like hustle culture, to like push yourself and go until you drop, and to not value wellness. And I feel like people think that that's just supposed to be a part of school and that's supposed to be a part of university, but it doesn't have to be. I feel like one of the things that I really wanted to do when I took over for the society was to kind of talk to students about like, why do you think you feel this way? Like, what can we as a society advocate for you to, whether it be like the mental health coordinator or to the university as a whole, what resources do students need so that they don't have to feel that way? Because I felt that way in school, of pushing myself until I pushed myself way too far. And that's not a good feeling for anyone. And it doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make people around you feel good either. So yeah, I think mental health advocacy is really important for students, because I think a lot of the time students really do feel like, oh, well, this is just the way it is. Like, this is just the way it has to be, but things don't have to be that way. There is room for change. There is room for advocacy. So I think that's one of the reasons, at least for me in my own experience, the mental health advocacy is especially important for students.
So next up is going to be back to Julia. So how has your time on the STU advocating for students really prepared you to go on to your career after St. Thomas to continue to advocate for different people?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, like my work that I've done through advocacy with the Students' Union has actually inspired me to move on and continue my studies in law, because I think that it's really connected, like that element of representation and advocacy. I feel as though like it's very similar to what I was referring to in my last response. It's some of those basic skills surrounding research, advocacy. I feel as though I can't stress this one enough, but I think empathy is probably the most important one, and it's the often underestimated one, especially in student advocacy. There's a tendency to paint, like with any group, like all students as like one, like all students being the traditional student that's coming out of high school, starting a four-year degree, considering that they're receiving financial support from a traditional family. We have all these assumptions, and I think that working in student advocacy has dismantled a lot of these assumptions for me, and I'm realizing that students, groups in society are much more complex. We're not just one cohesive unit, rather we all have our differences, and this is something that's really important to acknowledge in advocacy, considering layers of accessibility and affordability, rather than just painting everyone as the same. And I think this is just a really important transferable skill. When I move on and study law, when I'm representing people, it's important to know that not all people are the same, and to exercise empathy in your relationships with others.
So back to Leanne. So I guess something I'm kind of curious about myself as well. So I really like this question. What would you say are your biggest accomplishments in your time at STU working towards advocacy and reconciliation? I know like I've seen in the last year a lot of progress being made, but I'm really curious to hear your point of view and kind of how you see it as an Indigenous person, the progress that's been made.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's one I could probably write a story about, really. You know, I would have never imagined that as a student you could have such an essential and important role on a campus, and one that has made such foundational changes. And so during my time at STU, I've learned so much. I've learned more than I can even tell you now, which is a really great thing. But what's really nice is to see when all your efforts, all your energy, all that extra time that you put in finally starts to come out in the wash. Like, we like to see when our work is making a difference. That's why we're doing it, is we're working towards change. And so for me, there's been a lot of that, actually. So starting in my first year, there was an Indigenous presence on campus, but it was kind of off in the corner. People weren't really aware of the community as much as maybe we would have liked people to be aware of it. And now, fast forward 4 years, and the kind of hub of our campus is becoming inclusive of this Indigenous community. And even better, the Indigenous community is hosting some of that space. And so for me, seeing that transition from, 4 years ago till present, of it being kind of tucked away in the corner, nobody knew about the community, nobody knew about the resources, to now being an open space anybody can come to. People are gathering together in that space. The community itself, as far as Indigenous students and staff and faculty, are much more visible than they were, say, even 2 years ago. And I think a lot of why that is because of the students that have put in the work to make us visible. And so we've had a lot of really dedicated students, or Indigenous students rather, who have put in the time, the energy, like I said, the vulnerability, because it does take a lot of that, I think, to do some of this work, to create space. And that space isn't just for Indigenous students, but it's also for non-Indigenous students too. And that's to learn together. And like I said, when we come back to reconciliation, that's the whole idea: learning together, working together, and doing it in a way that has good intention. And I can confidently say that in the 4 years time that I've been at STU, that has changed greatly. When I came to STU, they hadn't had a student representative, or an Indigenous student representative rather, on the STU for 3 years before my role. And since then, the role has been filled the last 4 years, which has increased our presence drastically. And actually today was a really exciting day, because one of our Indigenous students got elected as the new student union president. So this is kind of like a glory moment, I guess, because finally we went from being that like community tucked in the corner. We were there, people kind of knew about us, but not really, to now being some of like the forward faces of these larger committees and groups on campus. And that is huge. And I am really confident that that will just continue because of the momentum that we've built. And again, the education, the awareness of this community, the resources that are there, and that they're there for everyone. They're not just there for Indigenous students. And like Emily was saying, we kind of get in the mentality that it's normal, but it's not normal. And Stu has done a really great job of saying like, hey, this isn't normal for people to feel like they're not part of a larger group, or that they're tucked off to the side. And so I think our work is really starting to pay off in that regard, where people are becoming more visible. These minority groups are, starting to become leaders on our campus. And I think for me, leaving STU now, like Julia, this is huge. Like, to know it's kind of comfy, right? You've done that work to make sure that this can continue happening, hopefully for a long time to come.
I haven't even heard about the new STU president yet. That's so exciting. So the next question is going to be for everybody. So like Leanne mentioned, being part of social responsibility and advocacy on campus is really about helping other people. But how do you guys feel that being involved in that at STU has really helped you as a person?
Yeah, back to me. I feel like I'm taking a lot of airtime right now. No, I think it's true. We do think about our community that we're benefiting all the time. But I occasionally update my resume and things for different opportunities. And it allows me the chance to look back on how much these opportunities have given to me personally and professionally. And it is huge. Like, STU is so great at preparing you for real world career things. And when I say that, I mean it with the best, intention, because I think our classes prepare us academically. They give us great skills, like Julia was saying, like research ability, writing ability, comprehension, public speaking skills. But these extracurriculars mean that you create relationships, you create connections in our community, you create resources, you do more of that research on your own, you create passion and initiative on your own. And for me, that has led to, secured employment all through my degree. It's led to graduate study work. It's just keeps trickling. I could go on forever, the benefits of this extracurricular work. And when it comes down to my time at STU, the classwork has supported me through this time, but it has definitely been the community, the connections I've made, and those relationships that have really made me feel confident leaving here and knowing I have somewhere else to go. And so for me, I think any student would probably have that same opportunity to really build themselves as a person, whether that's professionally or personally, grow your skills, but also grow them so that you are really a great candidate for employment for other opportunities after you leave the STU community too.
I think for me, getting involved in advocacy and in social responsibility has given me the opportunity to connect with people similar to like what Leanne said, people who share in similar experience to you, people who share in similar values and similar passions as you. So I've been able to speak with students who are a part of communities that I'm a part of as a queer student, as a female student, as a student who struggled with my own mental health. I've been able to find kind of outlets to use my own experiences and maybe things that were not that great for me. And I've been able to turn those into really positive things and been able to advocate both for myself and for other people. So it's been really great to kind of find ways to use those hard things to kind of create change for everyone, things that will benefit everybody, and really being able to create, again, those communities for yourself, those little like pockets of people that you have around campus. And then everywhere you go, you have like your people are all around you. And I think another big thing for me is that I've been able to take the things that I'm learning and the things that I've taught myself and the things I've being taught in my classes that I'm learning. And I'm also able to bring that like into every other community that I go to. So when I go home, my mom always says something when I'm calling her about assignments or I'm home on break. She's like, I feel like I'm in university again, just like talking to you when you talk about school, because my mom is learning things and like getting to hear about all these things that I'm involved in at school and these conversations that we have in classes that I never would have had in a high school class. Like I've been able to talk about things that were like, no, we don't talk about that in like my high school classes. So just being able to educate myself and educate other people and finding people who are like me and being able to use my experiences to ultimately help other people.
Yeah, just tying into what Emily said, STU really gives you the opportunity to connect with peers who are like-minded. I can just picture right now how many times I've turned around in my chair to listen to something Emily has to say in class, because it's so engaging, and you kind of feel like, wow, I am not an abstract thinker, or it's okay to feel the way I'm feeling about certain issues, which is part of what pushed me to do this. It's building confidence. And like Leanne said earlier, it's all about learning to be vulnerable and sitting with that. And if you can sit with your vulnerability, you will learn so much. You will learn more about yourself and the people around you than you ever thought possible.
Geez, so many lovely answers. Going last is always the hardest. Yeah, I think with me, and I bet all of these lovely ladies will agree, is the fact that our education and advocacy work has made us smarter. And I don't mean that in a way of like, we've read more stuff and we just know more stuff or more material, but rather like our way of thinking has changed so much. Like when we assess problems, it's not always these simple solutions. And we're always critically thinking about the work that we're doing and the people that our work is impacting. I know for me personally, this year, a new experience for me is working for the Fredericton Homeless Shelter, doing a human rights internship there. And this is a population that I had never previously worked with. And me, everyone has assumptions, and you have to shed yourself of assumptions. You have to learn. And I've come to realize that certain human rights issues that may impact me are going to impact someone even more if they have a vulnerability for housing. So just like things, the way I think about problems and how they're going to affect people differently has just had such a huge impact on the way I think and my relationships with other people that are alike and different to me.
Awesome. I swear you guys are all so much better spoken than I was when I graduated university. So our last question is going to be, again, for everybody. So for students who are just coming to St. Thomas and they really want to get involved with your organization, how would they take that first step to getting involved?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter if you have one chosen interest or you have 5 or you have 10. And for me, I was the one who had 10. I didn't know where I wanted to be. Like, I came to university, I was so overwhelmed because coming from a small community, like Emily said, like we didn't talk about these things. We didn't have these things. They were a little taboo when they were talked about. So when I came to STU, I was pretty overwhelmed at how many things our campus is working towards, are initiating or starting projects for. And so to me, when you come to campus, I think you should take that time to experiment and figure out what you're passionate about. And it may take a year, it may take 2 years, or you may be like me and spend your whole degree trying to figure out where you're supposed to be. And I think that's completely fine. Like Julia was saying too, all of it will accumulate and will give you real life skills. And so no matter if you spend, a semester working with Emily on mental health, and then you also are part of the Black Student Association and you sit on the STU, or you're really interested in film studies and fine arts, so you go and do a theater show with them. I think what you're going to figure out is that you can be involved in so many different things and you'll find the intersects for them so easily. And so what's happened to me is, I'd start in one direction. The obvious direction is I wanted to be involved in the Indigenous community, but that led me to working with STU, which led me to working for advocacy boards, which led to me hosting, workshops around, financial needs and housing and things like that. And then again, you start to realize, okay, who are the vulnerable communities in these situations? So then that gets into, what Julia was talking about too, like it opens your eyes to what else there is to learn. And so for me, my path has not been straightforward. It's actually been really messy. And I think that's okay though. And so my advice, if you're coming just to, is to explore, to take kind of the initiative to get involved in those things from the very beginning. Everybody is doing it. So you're not going to be alone. If you feel like you're uneducated, feel like you don't know as much as you should, you're not alone. You're in the same boat as everybody else. We're all there to learn. And maybe something will really trigger your interest. And maybe it'll be something like, hey, this is totally out of my interest, in my zone. And you move on. And there's no commitment to stay in that one area. And there's no reason that it has to be the exact same, set up as how it has been for years before. And the Reconciliation Committee is a really great example of that. Like, the committee didn't exist until 2021. There were committees in the past, they kind of came and went. And so we introduced the committee again, we rebranded everything, we created a new purpose, a new intention, and we made it what we needed it to be in that time. And so now a new group of students comes in and they make it what they need it to be. And so I guess the message with that is that we're also working in a world that is changing every day, and new issues are appearing, new things are coming up, new problems are coming to light, new, vulnerabilities are coming forward. And so with that, your interests are bound to change too. And so you may start in one direction and then go down a rabbit hole, and then realize that there's a whole other area that you didn't realize existed. And so I guess my advice to you is get involved from the beginning, do multiple things, figure out what you like and what you're passionate about, and then run with it. And I'm sure that you'll find your niche somewhere in there.
I definitely echo what Leanne just said about exploring and being just open to exploring and just trying new things, you'll know and you'll see when you get to STU that there's a million different avenues that you can take. And for some people that is really exciting and you want to run down every single one of them. For some people that's really overwhelming. So like, don't be afraid to just like try different things and you, again, you will find your niche, you'll find where you're passionate about. And a kind of a way that I suggest, or maybe like some advice of how to do that, is in the classes that you take classes that you're interested in and take classes that you're passionate about, because a lot of those interests and those passions that you have will come through in those classes if you're taking classes that you are interested in. I think that's something that we really kind of push students to do at STU, is to take what you're interested in and take what excites you and what is a passion for you. There's no classes, especially in those first couple of years, that you're like supposed to take. So be open to just dipping your toes in things. That's how I found women and gender studies. That's how I found human rights. That's how I kind of was able to really develop these passions, was both outside of the classroom, but I think a lot of it can also start in the classroom as well. Or maybe one conversation you have in a class will like spark an interest for you, and you'll be able to connect the dots between this course and these two disciplines. So for me, I found a really great crossover between women and gender studies and human rights. And I've been able to like write papers combining things I'm learning in both of these things. And I've been able to take those kind of topics and go back to my other exec members for the Mental Health Society and be like, how can we implement this idea or this topic into the work that we are doing? So definitely exploring within the community extracurricularly, but also like looking at the classes that you're taking. If you're someone who's interested in advocacy and you want that to be a big part of your time at STU, a lot of that can also start in the classroom as well.
Yeah, Leanne and Emily basically summarized the most of the important points of getting started at STU in terms of communities and different associations. What I would say is to just don't wait. If something piques your interest, get involved sooner rather than later. You don't have to be the spokesperson. You don't have to participate in panels if you're not comfortable, but just keep in mind that all of us who are sitting on these committees and in these positions, we want to hear your ideas. We want fresh minds, fresh eyes. And with new issues that are constantly arising, we're always looking for those fresh ideas to find solutions to the new issues. Don't be like me. Don't wait till third year and jump into an executive position. It's a little stressful. I can't lie, but it has taught me so much. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be able to give you this advice now. So just the same as everybody else, I'm sure to get involved, shoot us an email. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. Get in touch. We are eager to hear from you.
Yeah, so I guess the last thing I can add to all those contributions is just, I guess, importantly, when you're getting involved, not to underestimate yourself, because I think as you heard today from all of our contributions, all of us kind of felt a bit maybe amateur. We didn't really know how to get started and whether or not we had the necessary like prerequisites to thrive in these settings, but you kind of learn over time. One other thing that I think is really important to add is, like, I know at STU we have so many different like clubs and societies, and we all have our different goals and missions, but it's also really important to know that you are an individual within an organization. So you can still work on like let's say like for STU, for example, I'm really passionate about advocating the value of liberal arts and affordability. So I can spend time focusing on these initiatives and implementing my knowledge from human rights. And then my fellow executives has a really big passion for housing and international student tuition. So we work as a collective with collective interests, but also within a collective, we might not all have the exact same priorities, but that's why we divide and conquer to best represent and work for students. So again, you're an individual within a broader organization, and you're not an expert. None of us are experts. We're still all learning. So you have to start somewhere and really challenge yourself to be the best advocate you can be.
Awesome. So that's just about all the time we have for today. So thank you so much for our future students for attending, and also our current students for being on this panel. You guys are all fantastic, and I'm always in awe to hear of all the work that our students are doing towards advocacy and social justice at the St. Thomas community. You guys constantly just impress me and blow me away. So thank you guys so much for being here. I know it's quite a busy time getting closer to the end of the year. So I can't thank you guys enough for being here. So if any of the future students who joined us today do have any questions, you want to know how to get in touch with any of these organizations or have any questions about St. Thomas, you can always reach out to the admissions office. We can help you out, get you in contact with whoever you want to talk to really make sure that you're as prepared as possible to bring as much of your thoughts and your opinions and your perspectives to all these societies that on campus, so you can get involved from day one when you're at STU. Thank you guys so much.